Hey everybody, this is your host Jonah Lupton of Startup Sense. Hope you're all having a great day. So, super excited about today's guest. We have Neil Thanedar from Labdoor. Neil, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So, yeah, you're very welcome, man. Thanks for coming on the show and taking some time out of your day. Um, what Labdoor is doing, and I'll let Neil obviously explain it in a second, but I love it because for some of the people listening, you may not know this. I used to own a supplement company, started it back in like 2013, ran it for a couple years, and then I got out of the business because I just felt like the industry was flawed in many ways. It was just one big gray area, no oversight and no transparency. And Neil's company is changing that. So, Neil, before we jump in and talk about Labdoor, just tell us about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm native St. Louisan, born and raised. Went to University of Michigan, and my goal was really to build a scientific company, to build something that used research to make the world a better place. And when I kind of got out of undergrad, my first idea was to get into biotech, to invent medicine, and it just turned out that uh, what I really a lot of those required really advanced degrees. It would have taken kind of a 10-year path to even start getting some credibility in biotech. And so I wanted to get right into the lab. And so I started a lab in Ann Arbor, Michigan in 2010. And we were a lab that did work for manufacturers. For if you had a product that got a recall, you could come to us and we could do all of the investigation to figure out why did the recall happen, what was the contaminant, what should you change in your manufacturing process to make it better. And so we were basically like high powered consultants using science to make these decisions. And in 2012, one day in the lab, just really had this idea that instead of waiting for something to go wrong for someone to pay us to fix it, could we just go to the store ahead of time and test everything? Could we just buy every protein powder on the market, take it into a lab and test it, and tell people what's in it? And if we could do it proactively instead of reactively, there might be a totally different business here. And that's really where Labdoor came from.
Awesome. So where did you guys actually start then? I mean, you already had access to a lab or did you guys set up a new lab?
So we had access to a lab in Michigan, and really, I thought that the business needed we needed the second half of this business, which it was going to need to be a technology company. And so I had two friends in Indianapolis who ended up becoming my co-founders. I actually moved to Indianapolis for a few months, and then all three of us moved out to San Francisco once we got funded.
Okay, so let's talk about the funding. When did you start to raise capital? How long did that process take? And then who did you eventually raise it from?
So before we spent 6 months kind of pre-seed, just working in Indianapolis by ourselves. Our first break happened by applying to an accelerator called Rock Health in San Francisco. We were accepted. They gave us $100,000, and that was enough to basically pay for us to move and live here for 4 months. And so that was in early 2013. And by the end of the Rock Health class, we had launched the first version of our website, had gotten some people, gotten a little bit of press, and and really the first thing I did was I wrote a cold email to Mark Cuban. And so I was just sitting in the Rock Health office, the space that we had, and I had met Mark at an event a year ago, just casually for about 30 minutes. We had talked a little bit about science and testing, and I had told him about my old lab and how we could reverse engineer things and we could be investigative scientists. And he had told me at the time in 2012, hey, if you ever come up with a way to use that investigative science on like a mass market consumer thing, you should find me. You should email me. Here's my card. And so a year later, I just emailed him and I said, hey, we did it. We built the first version of what we had talked about. Would you be interested in investing? And he asked me maybe like 10 questions over a course of 5 emails, and was once he had gotten good answers, he was ready to invest.
So what types of products did you guys start off analyzing in the beginning?
So we, at the beginning, Mark's $250,000 investment let us test three categories: protein, fish oil, and multivitamins. And that's all we started with, just under 100 products.
Why did you pick those three?
we'd already, I think, one there that they were at the time the three biggest selling categories in supplements. It was
Okay.
also that we'd always been really curious about protein. It's in any of these categories, multivitamins are the same way. We get really motivated by categories where people are buying based on brand. That's a great signal that you need Labdoor. When you're going into a store and you're like, oh man, there's so many choices. I don't know what to buy. Oh, hey, there's a brand I've seen before. Let me buy that.
Right.
That's when you're using that heuristic. You're using that decision making criteria because you don't have the real data. And so I think with protein, fish oil, multivitamins, we really felt like that was how the market worked in many cases. And it was the famous brands, not the highest concentrated brands, that were winning.
And I would agree that in the beginning, when I started my supplement company, I realized I was more of a marketing company than I was a product company. It was about branding and who, what sponsors or promo people, sponsored athletes, I guess if you want to call it that, were promoting my brand, how much money I could spend on Facebook ads and other types of digital marketing. Because at the end of the day, I mean, no one really knows. I mean, protein doesn't really make you feel anything. Neither does vitamins or fish oil or a lot of these other supplements. So you're just kind of going on you're going on the brand. You're putting so much trust in them. You're putting these ingredients into your body, and you really have no idea what you're even consuming. I mean, that is a little scary, isn't it?
It's nuts, and I think that's another great point. Is the idea of whether an experience can really teach you something about a product, right? And so if you're thinking about restaurants, Yelp does a really good job because you can 10 minutes after you finish that meal, you know whether it was good for you or not, right? And that same feeling doesn't happen with protein. You're not stronger 10 minutes after your workout.
Right, right.
And so you have to trust the science. You have to say, hey, I can't know whether it's going to work for me today, but I know that lead's bad for me and sodium's bad for me, and I know that a 90% concentrated whey protein isolate is better than a 60% concentrated calcium caseinate or something. And that I trust that Labdoor is going to do all of that testing and combine it and put it into one score so I can easily understand it.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to be able to do. We want to make it as simple as possible to make a smart decision.
How big is the supplement company overall, supplement and vitamin industry?
So we've seen 36 billion US, and we've seen it grow really rapidly. The last estimate I saw said that in '94 the supplement industry was 4 billion, and in 2016 it'll be 36.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard similar numbers. I've heard closer to somewhere between 30 and 40 billion. So I think that number is pretty accurate. And then I think one of the big misconceptions out there is a lot of people think that the supplement industry is governed by the FDA, but it's not, right?
It is not, and it seems to be trending kind of even further in kind of a deregulation path. And so there's really a small team at the FDA that even kind of does research on supplements, and they're not testing. And I think that's a really key issue. Is they're doing basically the same thing that happens in food, right? You see that salmonella recall that happens every few months at different restaurants, or like the tomato at Safeway gets recalled. Whenever those types of food-based recalls happen, they happen very reactively.
Right.
And the FDA is letting the same reactive system work for supplements when we really should have someone who is testing ahead of time. You can't be experimenting on yourself. You really want the experiments to happen in the lab before you take the product.
Right. I mean, I know there are GMP certified labs where a lot of these supplement companies are manufacturing, but that's kind of like the extent of the regulation, right?
Yes, and a lot of those things are very pass-fail based systems. Even the FDA for pharmaceuticals is a pass-fail system,
Wow.
right? It is like either it's on the shelf or it's not. And even at that level, we want in the GMP audit is the same way, and a lot of these certifications are the same way. It's a yes or no answer. And quality is not really a yes or no answer. There are so many different shades of, well, if there are truly hundreds of protein powders on the market, which one am I buying? Not like which 50 are bad is interesting, but that's not as useful as which one is the best for me.
Exactly. I mean, if you're going to and protein's not cheap. None of these supplements are cheap. I feel like they've all gotten a lot more expensive in the last 10 years. And part of that is, supply and demand. And then the wrong ingredient prices go up. So if I'm going to go out and spend $50, $60 on a 4 or 5 pound tub of protein, I want to make sure that I'm getting what I'm paying for.
Absolutely.
How many supplement companies are out there?
So I've heard that's a pretty big number. I've heard anywhere from there's definitely tens of thousands of SKUs out there, with potentially about 5,000 new ones being added to the market each year. And so there's a lot of turnover. We're at 700 products. We want to be able to more than double that next year, and really, I think when we're in the kind of the 2,000-3,000 product range, you can start. That's 2,000 products is right about where GNC's at. We're starting to get into a meaningful scale where you show up, you need a product, we'll have a recommendation for you. And then we'll let consumers drive us past that. If they want us to test the 90th protein powder, we'll do that.
Right. I mean, I know bodybuilding.com has at least 10,000 products on their website, but I'm guessing that, the top 10% of those products probably make up 90% of their sales, their revenue, right?
Yeah, and that's a different kind of marketplace, right? And I think that's one of the big differences with what we thought about and the company we became is, I mean, at some level, bodybuilding and Labdoor are both marketplaces, and there's just different ways to get onto Labdoor's marketplace. And I think we would love for Labdoor to be a place where if you focused only on R&D, if you could really put more and more of your spend as a supplement company on R&D instead of marketing, then we should be able to take care of them. The marketplace should be able to take care of the marketing for you if you're a good product, right? Because if you take your product from 75% whey protein isolate to 90% whey protein isolate, you're going to go from a B to an A in Labdoor system. You're going to increase your sales. There's actually a value now to spending money on higher quality ingredients because the value is increased sales on Labdoor.
Right.
And I love that incentive. I think that's really important.
I mean, look at all the other industries out there. I mean, whether it's cars, whether it's TVs, I mean, there's like Consumer Reports, reviews and ratings on all the stuff that we buy, yet the stuff that we're putting into our body, there's nothing. Like it's nuts.
It's just this weird gray area, right? Like we've got this zone where like things we can try are very easy to test, right? And then things like medicines we feel are very hard to test, and so we trust the government. And then I just truly believe there's this middle ground, and supplements are there. Your cosmetics, your personal care. It's even like your deodorants and shampoos and your razor blades, like anything in that Walgreens or CVS, all those health products, they fall in that gray area. And every time you buy those things on brand, right? Like these are the things that are advertised on ESPN, right? These are those kind of big name products. And those are great signals that you should be checking the data before you buy.
So the other day I was talking to a friend of mine. She's worked in a beauty retail store for the last 5 or 6 years, and I told her that she asked me what kind of products I was using for my skin, my body, whatever. I told her, she's like, "You got to be kidding me! Those products, I know they're big name brands, but the stuff they put into them are cheap. They're so horrible for your skin. They're drying it out. They're doing this. They're doing that." I'm like, well, I'm a guy. I don't know. Like, I don't know what skincare brand to trust. I just go into CVS and buy whatever's cheapest. And she's like, yeah, that is not the right way to do it. So, we're actually talking about starting a skincare company together, which would have, offer transparency and high quality products and this and that. So, I don't want to get off topic too much. Let's talk about Labdoor. What have you seen in results? You guys have run hundreds of tests on hundreds of products. What have you found?
We're seeing on certain categories like probiotics, we're seeing products that just don't even have the active ingredient. Garcinia is the same case. 70% of the Garcinia products we tested had less active ingredient than the label said it did.
Wow.
And those are the crazy ones. And so that's like the one group of categories is companies that are truly just like failing consumers completely, not even trying to make a good product. And those are some of the biggest examples. We're seeing also just companies that are just, for multiple reasons, like protein powders often have a lot more sodium than they claim, because all of those, it's not just the added, they might just be counting the added sodium and then putting that on the label, but you've got a bunch of sodium-based preservatives in a lot of these products that's causing, in many cases, double the sodium content versus what they claim on the label. And that's going to make you bloat. That's going to make you feel like you got more gains than you really did.
Wow.
And so those are some of the really big examples of just what we truly feel is just cheating.
Now, a lot of people obviously buy protein powder for the grams of protein per serving. On average, how much less protein are we getting per serving than is on the label?
So at least in protein on active ingredients, the vast majority of companies, like 80% of the companies, are hitting their label claim. It's like 20% or less of companies, but those companies that like bottom 20 in protein, it can be crazy. Like there are products that claim 30 and give you 20. There's products that claim 20 and give you 7, right? We found some really crazy examples in the like small minority of products that are really cheating.
So what happens with the 20% that are really cheating, or maybe in some categories it's even more than that, where they're not even coming close to hitting their labels? Do you guys have any sort of a process for reaching out to them and saying, hey, we've tested your products, this is what we got, this is concerning, do something to fix it, or we're handing it over to the FDA? Like what happens?
We never push that. It's always just we just publish it publicly and see what happens. What usually does happen is a customer might alert the company that a new review came out on Labdoor, and then they'll come and check it. And we've
Okay.
had a few cases where those F companies have said, "I can't believe it. I can't believe that that's my product." And we've one thing we decided to do is we created a challenge process. And this is relatively new, but it's basically like the NFL. Like if someone wants to challenge our results, they can challenge any result once. If we're right, they pay for it. If they're right, we pay for it, and we'll change the data if they're right. And this is the system that we wanted to use to say, hey, if you want to fight our data, let's retest. Like let's get more data. That's the best way to do this. And in the last few cases that we've done this, the product comes back with the same data, and then the next answer is, hey, I think it's not a finished product problem, it's a supplier issue. And
Right.
so then they start checking all their suppliers. In a few cases they replace suppliers, they get better ingredients, and then they reformulate the product. And that's awesome. Like when you see a product that used to be an F and it increases its grade after it was on Labdoor, that's amazing, right? It's like it's actually our job is being done, and that's something that we can align the incentives in a way that the FDA can ban products, they can recall products, but they're doing it after the fact. If we can get in ahead and get products better before consumers even take them, that's the magic.
Right. You're providing a valuable service to those companies that want to put out quality products, but when they're using third-party manufacturers, and a lot of them do, they can't control sometimes where those manufacturers are actually sourcing their ingredients from. Do you have an idea of how many supplement companies out there are doing their own tests on their own products on a consistent basis?
It's hard to tell, and I think in this is another reason why we've really looked at Labdoor as a company that gets better as it gets bigger. If we can get more and more coverage, the hard part is when Labdoor is small, because when we're small, like we don't have the products, and so no one's showing up, so we're not growing, so we don't have money to test more products, right? So there's this chicken and egg problem at the beginning. But once this starts kicking up, once we start getting hundreds and now thousands of products on our site, then there's now a self-fulfilling, right? We have data coming back in. And then we quickly become the one lab that's testing thousands of products. And so then you don't have to worry about, hey, is everyone testing at their own lab? No, everyone tests, like every product gets tested at Labdoor. Like there's one lab that tests everything. And really aggregating that is so important. Really organizing that is so important, because it's not happening. We're not getting the testing because there's no one who's willing to do the work.
Right.
And so you have to come up with a system like this. A startup is really the best system for getting this work done.
I mean, do you think at some point, I mean, certainly if I was starting a supplement company again, and I was using a third-party manufacturer, like I said, most of them do, because it's very expensive to set up your own manufacturing facility, to buy all the equipment, lease the warehouse space, it can cost millions of dollars. So they outsource it. When I'm getting products back from my manufacturer, whether it's 1,000, products a month, 5,000, 10,000, I would want to pay Labdoor to do some random tests. Like I would want to open up a random box and pull out, a bottle of protein, pull out some creatine, pull out some amino acids, and ship it to you guys and have you guys run a test, so I know that my manufacturer is not screwing me over. So I can see where that's another part of your business model, right? Where these supplement companies pay you guys to do random tests on their products.
Yeah, so this is another reason why. So we're building a lab right now. So we just raised a little over $3 million. We got a great investor in Floodgate, who is has was the first lead investor in Twitter and Lyft and some really great companies, and they're really giving us range to invest in the future of the business. And I think the future is a lab that can test products as quickly as possible. We want to be able to be a really rapid, accurate assembly line for testing. And if we do that, if we have that capacity, then we should be able to test all kinds of things. We've come up with the idea to help screen products for banned substances. Can
Yeah.
we do drug testing of products?
Right.
And if we can get in a separate assembly line, that's truly a pass fail kind of a thing, right? It's like there are drugs in this product or not. And so those types of things, we might do a certification. We might say, hey, like let's guarantee that this lot is banned substance free. And so those types of testing are definitely possible. And it's another way where, like, as we get bigger, we earn the right to provide more services, which is fun. We're laddering up and we're kind of growing in a really kind of creative way.
Do you know if companies like GNC and Vitamin Shop test every product before they put it on their shelves?
I don't know. I think that's the hard part too, because even if the testing is being done, we don't know who's doing it. We don't have any transparency into it. Uh, and we're not getting any value out of that data, right? I think it's so many, what it really comes down to, it reminds me of a lot of these companies, a lot of these retailers, just this industry in general has been built around building a brand and saying, trust me. And I think a lot of the retailers have really done that. And so part of that is just kind of you abstract any of the work you do. If you're doing quality control, it's assumed you're doing quality control, but you don't have to talk about it. And what I really want to be able to do is, when Labdoor does quality control, you should be able to see it. It's one reason why we love doing podcasts, because it's not like a 2-minute article. It's like you can really tell a story of why we do this and why we're here and what the details are. We want to be able to do more video with Labdoor this year. We want to be able to have, right, interview the scientists in the lab, maybe actually do live work, be able to kind of in real time tell consumers what we're doing, bring people into the lab, have people tour, right? Just every way where people feel like, hey, this is your quality control system, you manage this. And really, one of my big dreams is to be able to have the consumers fully manage the data. Like, you should be able to come to Labdoor, like personalize our site, and it works completely different for you than it does for everyone else. Because you have completely different preferences, right? Like, maybe
Right.
you might care more or less about price. There's certain people who will pay any price for the best product. There's others who, like, you need medium quality for a low price. You're going for value. There's different needs in the concentration, the quality of the ingredients. There's so many things that we could do to say, hey, this is your list, these are your rankings, these are your decisions, and kind of giving that power. I think as our data gets stronger and stronger, we get to do cooler things with it. And so those are some of the ideas we have over the next couple of years.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I mean, anything that customizes something to someone's preferences and their goals and whatnot, that's a win-win. I was trying to explain this to my dad last night, actually, how there's companies that have created software that enable websites to optimize the content that you see based on how you're finding the website. My dad's in his 70s. If he went to your website, his interests and the products that he's trying to look up and learn more about are way different than the products that I would be trying to look up and learn about. What have you guys had conversations with the FDA so far about what you're doing?
We haven't. I think that's something that we want to do a lot more of now, especially now that we have our lab. We want to be a resource for people. I think the first kind of few years of this business were just kind of this pure. I always feel like it's a chicken and egg thing of kind of getting a service like this up and running, because you've got to do the testing before you can get traffic. And we really kind of fought through that and got that right. And now we feel like the model is kind of self-perpetuating. It's now running on its own. And now we have a regular stream of data. If we want to run an API to the FDA and have them notified every time a product fails, we can do that now. And that's something that we weren't able to do last year. And so I'm hoping that that's something we can do. But at the other hand, I think it's kind of in our style to just publish, just to go directly to consumers. And then the side effect might be that the FDA notices or the FTC notices, and they use that data for some useful purpose. But we've really focused on, if there's only one thing we can do, we'll just get the data to people.
Right. I mean, I remember, I think it was about a year ago when, I don't know if it was the FDA or FTC, whoever, came out with a huge lawsuit against dozens and dozens of supplement companies because they were misrepresenting the products and not disclosing all the ingredients on the labels. And, I know USP Labs was in there and a few other ones. So there's, they're trying to clean up the industry, but it is a massive industry. It's hard to clean up a 30, 40, $50 billion industry, overnight. It takes some time.
If you're going to be successful at reactive regulation, then you need better proactive data. And so I think that's our specialty, and whatever we can do to make them more effective, we'll do our best to help out.
Have you met people that said, I don't take supplements because I don't trust what's in them?
That happens a lot. There's this interesting gap that I think people get stuck in. And I think I think Labdoor can solve this. And actually, this is one of the ways that Labdoor will cause supplement sales to increase long term, is that their doctors are saying, take fish oil. And then they're going to the store and they're looking and they're saying, which one? And a Walgreens has 100 fish oils, right? But an Amazon has over 1,000 fish oils.
Oh my God. That's mind blowing. That's insane.
Right. And which one? And so that and so some people just don't take anyone.
They buy the cheapest one. They buy the cheap one, and they're not getting any fish oil.
It's crazy. There are fish oils that are 10% omega-3s and fish oils that are 90% omega-3s.
God, my God. No, I mean, I love what you guys are doing. So let's talk about the business. How do you acquire your customers, and how do you guys plan on making money from this?
So right now it's a really classic organic kind of SEO based traffic. So people are really finding us by searching best fish oil, best multivitamins, best probiotic. And that's really been kind of our bread and butter while we've been ramping up. And then on the other end, our big business has been affiliate links. So you buy from Amazon, GNC, Vitamin Shop, we've got a link to take you out and finish the purchase. And we make about 10% of the sale price when we get that done.
Okay, cool. I mean, 10% is not great, but it's at least a good place to start.
Yeah. We're trying to figure out whether fulfilling directly e-commerce is something that we want to do. We're trying to figure out whether there are services that we can provide you. Maybe there's a dietitian or some sort of personalized plan that we can build for you. So we're testing all of that. What I think we feel really good about is what I call our self-service version of Labdoor is ready. Labdoor.com is the self-service version of what we do. And then whatever we can do to make it full service, if we can personalize it, if we can add health professionals that you can talk to, any of those types of things is really kind of on the next kind of year or two's pipeline.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to chat offline because, I mean, like I said, I started a supplement company, built it, did all the logistics and fulfillment, and work with a lot of the kind of the middle market, the middle market players like Europa and whatnot. So I'd be happy to give you some information, what lessons I learned in my 2 years, because there was a lot of them.
It's great. It's so interesting. And I think we want to be very focused on supplements. And I think we want to then go, just like a lot of people who are in the supplement industry also have thought about skincare and have thought about cosmetics and have thought about these other products. Those are all products that have very similar characteristics. You've got huge variances in who's using the good active ingredients, who's using the cheap active ingredients, who's using high concentrations, who's using low concentrations. A lot of that stuff is coming right back in, and it's just exciting. Having our own lab is going to let us get into new things and experiment a lot faster.
Yeah, it's scary that we actually don't pay more attention to the reviews and the ratings of the stuff that we put on our body and in our body. That's where we should be putting most of our focus, not, who makes the best TV for $300. It's, I mean, and someone like myself, I probably spend $200 a month on supplements. And I want to know that I'm getting, my money for it. Now, okay, so you guys are traditional kind of right now. It's create content, publish it, SEO. Are you guys doing your own SEO in house, or do you use do you outsource a service like that?
No, it's all we built our own content system. Our reviews and our ratings have a very specific style, and we wanted it to be special. And so it's kind of built into that, but really it's just content, right? It's just like if you search best fish oil, there's a whole bunch of blogs talking about best fish oil, and then there's us where we like actually scientifically tested the top 50 fish oil brands on the market, and we published like a 4,000 word report on it. And so there's just like at some level, Google just understands that and rewards that as the best content.
Right, right. I don't want to put you on the spot too much here, but do you have any, let's stick to supplement space. Do you have any, like your top 3 brands that you would recommend across the board because their products test so well?
That the crazy thing is that's not happening. We have 25 categories of supplements, and I think there's like 19 or 20 different brands have at least one number one.
Oh, okay.
So what's happening is the specialty brands tend to win. So if you're like My Protein, you tend to win. You win the protein category. If you're WHC, which is like a Belgian company that only makes fish oil, you win the fish oil category. And there's a lot of companies that are. Probiotics was the same way with Renew Life. In a lot of these cases, we're seeing brands that in their specialty, they are number one, and then they might also make a multivitamin, and that multivitamin might be number 15. And so what you've got to do is really not use brand to make those decisions. You've got to use the scientific data to figure out within a brand which of their products are good and which of theirs are average.
Right. This is good. I mean, because I'm actually just looking at the protein category right now, and a lot of the products that I use on a consistent basis are B plus or better. So I mean, that makes me feel better. I mean, I'm glad I'm not putting any C's or D's into my body. Oh, BSN. So BSN. Wow. So I used to take Syntha 6. That was my protein for like a year. That's a D plus. So what does that normally mean? If someone gets a D plus grade, where are they screwing up?
So protein concentration is usually the biggest factor. So I know that there's a lot of those a lot of the products in the top 10 are 70, 80, 85% protein, and that's bound protein. We've checked the amino acids. There's no spiking. There's products, the B, C, D products are maybe 60, 50, 40% protein.
Okay.
And that's what we're finding out, right? If your product is less than half protein, your protein product is less than half protein, there's a problem there. And that's the big issue. And they're just products where if you took 2 different products and took 2 different 30-gram scoops, one of them is going to have 25 grams of protein and one's going to have 12. And that's a huge difference. And often the second product is more expensive. And that's one thing that I think is one of the most surprising features of all of the data, all the testing we've done, is that there is no correlation between price and quality. You never see any correlation in the categories.
That's scary. Wow.
We even found, I'm trying to remember which category it was, where literally the cheapest product in the category won the number 1 spot.
Wow. Yeah. If you figure it out, if you remember, let me know, because that's like, I mean, usually, I usually, especially when it comes to supplements, I try to stay away from the cheapest because I figure it's the lowest quality ingredients. But like you're saying, that's definitely not true.
And it's about getting the data, right? If you could make the decision when you're in the store, if you could buy based on what was inside the bottle instead of what was outside the bottle, you would make a smarter decision.
Do you think these supplement companies are looking forward to working with Labdoor, or are they a little scared, or is it just kind of depends on who they are, I guess, and whether or not they're really trying to look out for their customer?
I think the best companies are really going to love Labdoor because of exactly what I think we were talking about it earlier, which is this idea of if you're a new supplement company, you feel like in order to compete in the market, you've got to spend most of your money on branding, influencers, celebrity endorsements, everything other than the product.
Right.
And what we really want you to do is if you're that small company, and don't worry, and you might feel like rushed to make 10 or 20 SKUs all at once, right? Because you need to get into the market, you need to get distribution. Instead of that, what Labdoor could allow you to do is be a much more startup version of a supplement company and just say, hey, there's one thing I know I'm good at, it's protein powders. So all we're going to do is have one SKU, it's going to be a protein powder, and we're going to be great. And Labdoor is going to, it's going to get tested by Labdoor. It's going to be a top 10 product. It's going to sell great. And then I'm going to use that momentum to get my second and third products out. And then you might never spend very much money on marketing and still grow your business. And I think in those cases, allowing the incentives where investing in the quality of the products gets you more sales is where that's when Labdoor will start solidifying as a core marketplace for this industry. And I think if we do that, I actually think industry sales will go up because there'll be more trust in the category. People will be more comfortable buying, right? You just like, if you go to the store and you're comfortable buying, you buy more, right? And so that's what we have to get in a place where you feel comfortable and confident making a safe decision.
Right. No, I totally agree. I think the supplement industry overall will benefit from this because it brings more transparency. People will they'll feel more comfortable going out and spending $50 on protein powder if they know they're actually getting $50 worth of protein.
Yep.
I mean, just look at, in terms of like social media influencers, look at what Instagram has done for the entire supplement industry. You have all these, these fitness models and athletes with large followings getting paid thousands of dollars to promote products. And, Joe Schmo or, a guy or girl sees that and buys the product, not knowing exactly what they're buying. It's just because, someone that they look up to is endorsing it, that's a little scary. So let's talk about kind of your investors. Floodgate, very well-known VC firm. What kind of value have they brought to the company so far?
I think Floodgate's in many ways, a great bridge from between angel and VC. And I think our first investor, Mark Cuban, was really that kind of classic angel. And in both these cases, both Mark and Floodgate are both they're home run hitters. They really want you to go entirely for the biggest possible idea and are really flexible with how you do it in the early stage. And I think that's what I really have really appreciated. And so they've given us the luxury. We'll talk in a board meeting or an investor meeting, and as long as we're transparent about what we're doing, and we should just be focusing on the one thing that's important for our business, and let everything else go. And I think they give us the power to do that. They give us the cash to do that, and that lets us invest in what we think is the number one most important thing in our business, which is the lab. Because the faster the lab operates, the faster the content shows up, and the faster the content shows up, the faster the business grows. And the faster the business grows, the faster we get to test, right? We have more money for testing. And we're at this point where the cycle is about to work. And I think that's what Floodgates saw in many ways when they made the investment is at the early stages, the cycle is working. The business is now kicking up and running on its own. And I think they're saying now, how is this 100 times or 1,000 times bigger? And we've got to make that happen. And so we're looking at how do we get 10 or 100 times bigger in supplements? And then how do we find 10 other categories, right? What other things would you wish you could buy just like you buy on Labdoor?
Right.
There should be one day where maybe you personalize once and then I can give you recommendations across 10 categories, right? And the easier and easier it gets, that's the whole point of this, right? It has to be easy to make a smart decision. And I think the smart decision part, we've kind of figured out. It takes testing. And once you have testing, you can get that done. And then now it's all about getting easier and easier. How do I get it personalized? How do I make the rankings more easy? How can you filter the rankings? How can you search more easily? Can we do a comparison tool? Can you do side-by-side comparisons of products? All kinds of stuff that will just make it easier to make that decision.
So the company is still based in San Francisco?
Yep. So we are in San Francisco. We moved kind of 10 miles south. So we're in South San Francisco. Okay. It's kind of an industrial biotech section of the city. It makes things like 3 times cheaper than the city, and gives us space. It allows us to have almost 10,000 square feet, where we can do a warehouse, we can do a lab, we can do an office all in one building.
Awesome. How many people how big is the company right now in terms of people?
We've got 18 today, 18 folks working for us. And it's been some of that. We were just 10 before the Series A, so we've ramped up this year since the start of the year. And really, it's kind of equally split between tech, building the site and building the apps, and science, working in the lab, doing the research, doing the grading.
How many people do you think you'll be a year from now?
It's pretty. I think we'll double next year. I would see
Wow.
us kind of 30, 35. Again, heavily in the lab. I think we're actually getting a good handle on the tech now. So I think we might be at the point where the tech can scale more linearly, but the science is going to definitely keep being a major focus for us. And so the next year or two, I mean, we need to hire 10 chemists probably in the next year and a half.
Jeez. Okay, so if you hire another 15 or 20 people, let's say half of them are chemists, what will the other half be? Customer support people, salespeople, like what are you guys focused on?
It's the second half is just a classic tech company. So you've got a few developers, a designer, a couple in customer support, a couple in operations.
Okay, cool. And are you only hiring in the San Francisco area? Does everyone work under one roof, or are you going to have people virtual around the country doing different things?
So we try to keep it. Everyone's going to be in house for as long as possible, especially because of the testing. We haven't figured that out. I'm curious about where it'll go. I mean, I'm been from the Midwest my whole life. If there's a way to do, if we get bigger, if e-commerce becomes a bigger thing for us, I'm sure we'll have to do warehousing in other places.
Right.
But it's a pretty efficient team. There's If you get it all really organized, the centralized testing allows us to. We should be able to test hundreds of products per month with 30 or 40 people.
Awesome.
And so we want to be that efficient because we're a tech company that has this huge extra expense, right? Like if you're another website and you're doing user reviews, you just build the website and people show up and they give you free content. And so we have this extra large expense. It ends up being a really cool advantage for us, but we want to be as efficient with it as possible so that we don't lose the money there.
How much does it cost you to test a product?
Oh, it costs us. Oh, it's anywhere from a protein powder can be like $1,500, $2,000
Really,
to
that
like
much?
yeah, because we're doing to like a single ingredient like vitamin D might be like $400 or $500. The problem with protein is that you've got to do individual amino acid testing to beat
Okay.
the immunospiking. And so protein used to be in 2013 when we first did it, we used a Keldol test, and protein was like a $500 test, $600 test, and then people were protein spiking, and so we missed it, and so we had to start doing amino acid testing, but that tripled the cost. And that's the other thing that another huge reason to have the lab ourselves is, I mean, anytime you use an external lab, there's high margins there, and so another way for us to get more efficient is just to have the lab internally.
Right, right. Holy cow! I never would have guessed it was that expensive. I figured it, between the cost of the machinery and all the other overhead, and then certainly the salaries of the chemist and whatnot. I mean, I knew it'd be in the hundreds, but I didn't realize it'd be 1,500 to 2,000 for a protein.
We've got to get it and I think that's part of the thing. We've got to get some scale into here. We might be able to drop those to where the cheaper products are in the $100 to $300 range, and even the expensive stuff are under 1,000, and that'll help us scale faster.
Right,
I
right.
think we can get that done. It's about getting in the lab, and just this is the efficiency part of the business. This is the scaling part of the business where we're kind of installing systems one at a time. We're taking things from manual to automatic, and we're trying to now kind of get it to where the business processes are starting to take care of themselves.
What does your typical day look like?
It is. What I try to do is meetings for the first couple hours. So usually like 8 to 10, 8 to 11, and then and that's usually at least an hour with my two co-founders. So we're really heavily into we're brainstorming, we're picking the day up, and then I leave like 11 to 5, 11 to 6, just like pure like one big project a day that I want to challenge. Usually these days it's in the website. The last few months it had been in fundraising, and then I'll go home, have dinner with my wife, and then usually every other night I'll probably from home do like a 2 3 hour night session, getting some stuff done.
What's been your favorite positive surprise since you started the company?
Oh man, I think one of my favorites is just a lot of these investors and kind of people that I've gotten to meet over the course of running Labdoor. It's fun to see people who like someone like Mark Cuban, who at 16 you idolize, at 26 is like
Right.
one of the biggest investors in your company, is really cool, right? And so these types of things, to the point where like, and by 36, I want to have made these people a lot of money, right? And so it's a really cool range of what we can do, and I think we get. I love the idea with a company like Labdoor, and we've started to see this is a few people have dropped out of someone's dropped out of an MD program, someone dropped out of a PhD program to start working at Labdoor because they wanted to do research now, right? They didn't want to wait 5 years and then they want to go to residency. They want to go through a postdoc. They just want to test now. They want to have data that impacts people's lives today. And it's really cool when like at every level, from these kind of big name investors to these really, really brilliant scientists, are saying, hey, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to invest in now. And that's cool. That's really fun to be able to have a mission that's driving people all in the same direction.
Do all your employees get stock options?
Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, if this turns into a 100, 200, $300 million company, those research people, those MDs will make a lot more money, with those stock options than they would have making 50, 60, 70 grand a year in the research world.
And that's it. Like you want to be in the game, right? Like, and that was really the reason why I started my lab was like I'm only 7 years out of school at this point. Like I'd be just finishing up like my postdoc at this point instead of having started two companies.
What is the single best piece of advice that anyone's ever given you?
I think the thing that I've always been focusing on it's just focus. It's just like there's one important thing in your business, and do that and let everything else go. Just like you're going to have fires burning at the end of the day, right? Like there are going to be in any startup there are fires burning, and you have to be comfortable letting them burn because there's just this one thing that is gonna save the business. And I think at Labdoor we did a really good job of just understanding that there was this brute force data that we needed to collect, and that if we got it, people would want it. Like this was, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of startups like, hey, build an MVP, like don't just like build it and assume people will come. But actually, this was one of those cases. Labdoor was actually one of those cases where we knew the data was valuable. We knew people needed this. It was truly a matter of brute forcing it in for 4 or 5 years until we could pay for enough data that people saw it as interesting.
Right.
And so by only focusing on that and like letting everything else go, and like we didn't spend any money on marketing, we didn't buy a bunch of Facebook ads, we didn't even try that because we're like, we can't afford that. We have to be organic, and we had to be cheap. We had to be very efficient with our office spaces, right? And we were really creative with that, and we started working out of a warehouse. And that ability to focus everything on just the one thing that's important, I think, is the reason why we got here. It's the reason why we got through that chicken and egg problem.
Well, and I mean, it also sounds like you guys are on your way to building a massively loyal community of people. So, I mean, that's how you're going to grow too. I mean, that's going to be amazing over the next few years as that community gets bigger and stronger, and tells their friends and coworkers and everyone else what you guys are doing. What is your favorite piece of software that you use on a daily basis?
Oh, I use Polymail, which is actually a new email iPhone app that is like, it's how I triage my email. It's probably the app I use the most, and it's a new Y Combinator company that's all they do. It's just an iOS app.
So I'm actually interviewing their founder Brandon on the show in a couple months. So perfect. And then I guess just to wrap it up, trying to think, I usually throw a couple questions in there like unrelated to the business, but if you could be mentored by anyone, who would it be?
I've wanted to meet Elon Musk, so I've been trying to figure out a way to finagle that.
I'm sure you'll figure out a way. And what is your favorite book and or TV show?
Oh, let's see. I've been reading a lot of. I'm reading Chaos Monkeys right now, which is a really cool, kind of really fun book about startups. My favorite book that I've read in the last few years is Personal History by Katharine Graham, and she used to run the Washington Post and just a fascinating story. She met multiple presidents through her time. Just like all, it really is like if you want to learn about the 20th century and really just a killer businesswoman, that's a great book. So those are the two that I've been working through recently. I don't watch a ton of TV outside of sports, and so I'm a big St. Louis sports fan. So Cardinals and Blues are my go-to if I'm coming home from work.
Awesome. And last question here. I don't know. I guess I'm drawing a blank now. Anything you want? Any parting words you want to share?
We're just trying to find that community of early adopters. So just whoever you know that loves supplements, tell them about Labdoor. Don't never buy supplements without checking Labdoor. It's just and if there's any specific product that you want us to test on Twitter, we're just at Labdoor, or you can even tweet at me at Neil Thanedar, and we'll add that to our list. We're trying to figure out what products are most popular right now because we're going to really be quickly ramping up the testing. So tell us what you want us to test, and we'll get it on our list.
Awesome. That's fantastic, man. I love what you guys are doing. Like I said, this one really hits home for me because I was in that industry. I'm an avid supplement guy. I know a lot of my friends are as well, and we've always kind of wondered, what are we actually putting in our bodies, and are we actually getting our money's worth? So I'm really psyched that Labdoor is bringing some transparency to a massively, just a massive industry that needs a service like this. So well done. I mean, I wish you guys continued success. Keep kicking ass, and you're welcome back on the show anytime you want.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man. Talk to you soon. Bye.